Hi, I'm Jonathan Williams, ALEC Chief Economist and Executive Vice President of Policy. Today, it's my pleasure to introduce and have here with us Governor Kristi Noem. Governor, thank you for being with us. It's just such a pleasure to have you here at ALEC. I know you're an ALEC alumnus from your time in the state legislature. And today, as we'll talk about here in a second, we're honoring you with the major award. So thanks so much for coming out and being with us.
Well, it's my privilege. I've got a lot of history with ALEC, and I know that you are an incredible resource for so many of our legislators still today in South Dakota. So thank you for partnering to make sure we have free markets and limited government and good wisdom behind the policies that we're pushing.
Well, thank you. And your story has been so inspiring of leading with the need for individual liberty and to keep the economy open and keep people's livelihoods open and kids in schools and people in their places of worship during this last difficult 18 months. And so, your experience as a state legislator, going to Congress, and now as chief executive. So for state legislators here looking to maybe follow in your footsteps at some point, what advice do you have to them?
Well, I don't know if you could have prepared for a lot of the circumstances that we've seen the last several years since I've been governor. In 2019, the entire state flooded in South Dakota. We got hit with a bomb cyclone. And so we thought when 2020 came, it would surely be better and easier. And then we, of course, experienced the pandemic. So I think that every day, I think the greatest gift that my parents gave me was to be teachable every day, to be constantly learning, do your own research. We live in an instant gratification society. Very few people put the work in to really know the wisdom behind really the data and the science and the facts behind an issue to make sure that they're being strategic and looking to the future. So we need legislators, we need policymakers that put the work in to make sure we're making the right decisions and have the discipline to stick to it. So that being teachable aspect, I think it became incredibly important this year as we focused on making sure that we protected the foundation of the country while we made decisions that oftentimes had to be made very quickly.
And so you've got an incredible story of how you first got involved in politics, and it revolves around a tax issue, one of the most hated taxes, the death tax. Talk to us a little bit about how that got you involved in public service.
Well, we were farmers and ranchers. My dad was a cowboy, and a big operation that I grew up on. We raised corn, wheat, soybeans, cattle, had several other businesses. But he was killed in an accident on our operation when he was 49 years old. And that changed everything for us. I was 22, ended up quitting college, coming home, becoming the general manager of the operation. But it wasn't very long after Dad passed away and we were dealing with this tragedy that we got a notification from the IRS that we owed death taxes, that we owed estate taxes. So as a lot of small businesses, as a lot of farmers and ranches deal with, we have a lot of land, we had a lot of machinery and cattle, but we didn't have money in the bank. And it made me angry. I could not believe that our family was going through what we were going through, and all of a sudden we had this big tax bill that we couldn't pay. And so I started showing up at meetings, started going to different discussions and debates and got involved that way. I think that that's really the only way I ever got involved in government and politics was because of that tragedy that happened and learning how unfair of a tax the death tax is, and that we needed people who had a business perspective weighing in on a lot of our tax policy and regulatory policy.
Thank goodness you did. So today we're here to honor you with the #1 ranking in our brand new report that we put together with the great economist and our great friend Arthur Laffer and Steve Moore and others that we've put together. And we rank the governors 1 through 50 based on their approach and their results on economic freedom and economic excellence and executive leadership. And so we're so excited to give you that award here today. What's the secret sauce? How have you been able to do it during very difficult times, as you mentioned in your tenure so far, just given global environment right now?
Oh my goodness. Well, I would say I never changed. Regardless of the circumstances that come, good government comes from a small government, a limited government, and a focus on what our founders envisioned for America, and that was our Constitution and what my role was. I very much focused every day in doing this job as governor. And remember, governors are CEOs. It's very different than serving in Congress. It's very different than working on policy because you get to weigh in on policy, but governors make decisions every single day that can immediately go into practice for people. But I did not want to be a leader that overstepped my authority. I very clearly focused on my state constitution, the U.S. Constitution, on what my job was as governor and what my job wasn't. And then I trusted my people and used personal responsibility to let them be flexible to make the best decisions. And whether it's tax policy, regulatory policy, even just protecting our basic freedoms, that knowledge of what my job was and reminding people they don't want a government that solves all their problems. You ask a government to solve all your problems, that government is going to be powerful enough to take everything away as well. So reminding them and educating them on that aspect of America and our freedoms, I think, was incredibly important to helping us make the best decisions.
Now, in our annual publication, Rich States, Poor States, that you authored the forward to in our most recent edition, so thank you for that again. We track the really how Americans vote with their feet, away from big government, high tax states like California here or New York or others, and move to states like South Dakota that value individual liberty and lower taxes. And of course, South Dakota is a state without a personal or a business income tax, so one of the very only states in the country, only 2 to do that. So how do you handle the inflow of all the population coming in terms of Rapid City's booming, Sioux Falls is booming, so many other areas? Do they bring ideas with them that might be anti-limited government? And how do you talk to them and message them and talk about why is it they have opportunity in a state like South Dakota?
You know, what we're finding in South Dakota is that people don't move to our state for our weather or our beaches. They're moving to South Dakota because they want to be like us. I think they recognize that they wanted to live somewhere where the government respected them. And so we've been very clear on telling our story, what quality of life we can offer, how we let them keep dollars in their pockets to make decisions for their families, and they have come overwhelmingly. We do have growing pains. We've got an incredible amount of housing that needs to be built. What's interesting to me is it's not just our biggest cities that are increasing in population. I've got towns that haven't grown for 30 years that have 400 or 500 people in them that have had 2 or 3 new families move in. A school district that maybe has 60 kids has 15 new kids and new life in it. So that is what is interesting, is for the first time in the history of this country, when people are looking for where they want to vacation, where they want to spend time and live with their families, the #1 searches are rural America and small towns. So I think that the last 2 years has taught folks that the way of life that we have in South Dakota is pretty special, and that they want to be a part of it.
So let's talk a little bit about the need in your mind for states to continue to raise their voice and push back against federal overreach. And of course now we're seeing at record levels with the Biden administration, the trillions and trillions of new spending, the inflation that we're seeing, the IRS snooping that's being proposed. You know, how do you suggest that states band together to fight back against this big government socialism that's going on right now in Washington? Of course, you have that great perspective serving in Congress. What's the most effective way for ALEC members and others who believe in the limited government, free markets, and federalism principles to make their voices heard?
Well, I think what's interesting is under the last administration, I spent most of my days on offense. I could be innovative and take conservative principles and put them to work, and the White House and federal government helped partner with us to streamline a lot of things for businesses and families. As soon as the Biden administration came in, I felt like I went on defense. And I've used every tool I can to push back on federal government overreach. And most of the time it's suing them. And we spend a lot of our time in the court system trying to rein in what they're doing. So we can band together as governors. A lot of us as Republican governors work together. I've also reached out to Democrat governors on certain issues.
That's great.
They're cutting our timber contracts. They're overreaching on federal lands. There's Democrat governors that are struggling with that too and losing jobs because of the federal government weighing in where they shouldn't. And if we can, even though we may disagree on 90% of the issues, there might be 10% there that we could work together on that might give us a little more momentum to push back on what this administration is doing. But I think everybody's shocked by how far this administration is going. It is not just a focus on getting more revenue and sustaining government. They are trying to change the country fundamentally. And what I've learned is that the public needs to be educated to that. I can't just make a decision. I need to tell people why I'm making the decision that I'm making and what they're doing that isn't what the federal government should be doing. So that education process, I've learned, is just as important as the actual decision that came before it.
So final question, Governor, what's next for South Dakota in terms of the policy outlook to stay ahead?
Yeah.
You know, there's lots of states looking to catch you. Just recently, North Carolina announced its plan of tax reform to eliminate its business income tax
Yes,
over
I
time
saw
to be
that.
more like South Dakota, Utah, Texas, so many competitive states. What's next in terms of keeping South Dakota ahead? And so when we're talking a year from now and you'll be #1 maybe 2 years ago.
Well, that would be fantastic. Our focus is on being an example to the nation. When I ran for governor, I talked about that because we were a smaller state. We had less people than other states did. We can do things quickly that other states maybe can't do. And what happened the last 3 years since I've been governor is that we just put into place the conservative principles that we've always believed, and we proved that it works, that it does bring growth, it does bring economic freedom, it does benefit families. So we will continue to build on that. We'll be repealing taxes this session, that arbitrary ones that are hidden in our statute. Our goal is always to remove more red tape than it is to ever think about putting it in, and to streamline processes, and then to really partner to get private investment into areas of growth that it should be. We have got historic revenues in South Dakota, so we have put historic numbers of dollars into trust funds, into reserves. We'll put more into reserves this year than we ever have. We have a AAA credit rating, and we'll maintain that, but then invest in long-term beneficial projects. We fully funded high-speed internet access from border to border. We built a railroad last year. We repaired dams that have been broken for 40, 50 years. So making those kind of long-term investments will help South Dakota continue to grow into the next generation.
Well, congratulations once again, Governor. We couldn't be more proud of you as an alumnus, and to give you this award. You've truly been a leading light for free market ideas across the states, and couldn't be more proud to have you here.
Well, thank you. For over a decade, I have turned to ALEC for a lot of the data that we need to make decisions, to give us the insight into what other states are doing that we can build on. You're an incredible organization, and anything I can do to help you get your message out, I think, is wonderful.
Well, thank you. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, America's #1 rated governor for economic freedom in the Laffer ALEC report on America's governors. It's great to have you here.
Thank you.